used to think the higher your faith, the closer you got to God. That belief was a type of ladder, and I just needed to keep climbing, rung by rung, verse by verse, until the doubts got quieter and the view got clearer. But something strange was happening the higher I climbed. The more I started to see that the blueprints didn't match the landscape I was seeing. The map didn't fit the mountains, and what I thought was heaven on the horizon just ended up being more sky. Endless, unreachable, beautiful, but not what I was promised. And that's when I started to accept that maybe this wasn't an ascent, maybe it was more of an escape. Church steeples once stood like compass points. Now they're barely pinpricks in a horizon that keeps expanding. Maybe it was Jeremiah 6:14 before I even knew the reference. I was raised inside a story I never consented to.
This is Peanut, November 29th, 1990. Good pendant.
Like fish learning late that they are swimming in water. I breathed in the various truths before I knew to call them that. I remember Matthew 23 and the story of the whitewashed tombs. I was told that they were the Pharisees, never us. Hypocrisy was always somewhere else, and most poignantly, inside atheism. The Bible was a kind of mirror to reflect God's wisdom and plans back to me, but I never turned that mirror inward. And still, somewhere deep in the machinery of my chest, something slipped. It started when we lost our house to mold.
Problems is living and growing in the walls of their home. Robin Stickley explains.
Here's the problem. Tests recently discovered a potentially toxic mold called Stachybotrys inside the home. It has seeped through the bedroom walls and is also in the furnace system.
And the years of begging for God to hold me and show me some sign of his presence that never came. I lost an innocence that you don't just get back. But what you do gain is the language to say, this air was never holy, it just smelt familiar. One of the biggest rules that I carried around as a kid was this: God has all the answers, and if you love him, he will always take care of you. And that worked out until it didn't. When my family lost the house that we lived in growing up, we were essentially houseless for a 2-year period.
That's why she's moved them out of this house and into a nearby hotel room.
And I remember praying and begging and trying to do all the things that I thought I needed to do for God to protect us. But ultimately he didn't. And what that cost me was my unshakable sense of safety in this world. If God wasn't going to be there, if he wasn't going to protect me, then I truly had nothing to fall back on, because in the Christian faith, I was never shown how to have agency over my own life. It was always depending on God, waiting on him, and trusting his plan. But in this moment, I was faced with this question of, when God doesn't show up, what power do you have against the God of the universe?
That means the airborne spores have contaminated everything. But the real damage is to the family's health.
As for the unspoken rule number 2 that I live by, is that you never question God, ever. Because from my understanding, if you did, you were basically halfway to hell. So I crushed every sense of curiosity in me from such a young age. And I didn't learn, or at least trust, anything that came from outside of the Bible. And the irony is that in the book of James, he talks about the man being blown and tossed by the wind. And ultimately, that's what Christianity made me into. And that's not because I doubted anything in the Bible. It was because I was never allowed to doubt anything. Fear was never just an emotion. It was a dog on a short leash. It didn't follow, it led. Hebrews 6 was that warning sign nailed to every exit. Walk out this door and there's no coming back. No prodigal banquet, no father running to come embrace you, just the shame and knowledge of hammering the nails into Jesus again, yourself. John 6:68 was the padlock on the gate. Lord, to whom shall we go? As if the whole universe were a single hallway and the church owned the only light bulb. Ephesians 4 was whispered in my bones that outside the walls of Christianity was nothing but rot. To be honest, I still carry it in my body. It's the tightness in my chest and the twisting of my gut. A reflex to self-interrogate every moral choice and action I've ever taken. For nearly 3 decades, I felt like I've been battling a malfunctioning piece inside my brain. The piece that just won't shut up and be quiet. It makes sense that I find it so challenging to fully separate myself from God and Christianity. Because fear works. It kept me tame. And it's kept echoing long after that voice was gone. The first fear that I ever had, and probably most Christians do, is the presence and existence of hell. And the fear was that if I ever stopped believing, I was essentially signing myself up for eternal torture. Not just like a bad day or a bad week, but eternity. That thought would keep me awake more nights than I can count. I would be bargaining with God, please don't let me make this mistake. Please don't let me slip up. And the second fear I had was, in a weird, twisted way, myself. Essentially, it boils down to the fear that without God, His guidance, and His presence in my life, I'd fall apart. My sense of right and wrong, my kindness, my moral compass would just disintegrate. I was terrified I would turn into someone that I hated, someone selfish, reckless, and broken. The last fear I had is a little bit harder to name. It's this essence or sense that even if hell is not real, that the world will still punish me. That walking away from my Christian life meant that the world around me would unravel and that I would be destined for misery and heartbreak and pain and suffering. And honestly, I still check myself. Like I'm still waiting, in a sense, for the hammer to fall. There's a type of silence that I learned to wear, like a sackcloth. While questions itched my skin beneath it, I knew that trying to scratch meant risking exposure. And I was reminded that curiosity was a type of gateway drug, and it was proof that my heart was hardening and my faith was waning. Romans 2 says that the law is written in every heart, carved there like initials to prove that God was here long before me, before time. But Jeremiah 17 says that the heart is a liar and deceitful above all things. So I buried all my questions in a box labeled silence. And I hid it deep in the darkest corners of my being, adding to it every time something didn't add up, hoping God would see this silence as proof of my faith and obedience. In that silence, I lost something. Not just the chance for answers, not just the opportunity to grow, not just my connection with God, but a voice. And it may have been small and weak, but it was mine.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
And did he put hairspray in it?
Yeah.
How did he do it, Robbie?
Yeah.
He dropped the world on top.
Put your head like that. What did he do?
And they went,
And then...
I remember hearing this story of one of my older siblings wanting to go to a dance. And in response, my dad took a Bible, slid it over, and said, "You can go if you show me where in here it says it's okay to disobey Jesus." That was it. There was no conversation, no dialogue, just show me a Bible verse or nothing. The takeaway for the young version of me in that moment was that you don't step out of line, and you don't even ask if that line makes sense. Because if you don't have a verse to defend it, it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter how you feel, you're wrong. And little by little, that is how I lost myself. Every time I swallowed a question, every time I buried any doubt, a piece of my voice was being lost and buried with it. I never built a framework for critical thinking. I never built or developed a wisdom outside of Bible trivia. I basically learned how to regurgitate and call that obedience. And back then, I really do think that I believed that this silence and this squashing of doubt was what acting out faith looked like. But now that I'm looking down on it from decades later, I see it more as a type of erasing of anything individual or me.
You help me? Yeah.
There were many occasions I thought that I had weak faith. Turns out it was more of a spiritual scar tissue. I thought I was a prodigal. Turns out I was in recovery. And the wound was finding out that the family and faith that taught me that God's perfect love drives out fear is also a weapon. This pain has a name: religious trauma. When your childhood is a Bible study in fear, when your worth is measured in purity and performance, when your doubts are diagnosed like diseases. That's not a spiritual formation, that's more like psychological fragmentation. Religious trauma syndrome is what happens when the story meant to save you teaches you you're never safe. It's the echo of hell in your dreams. The guilt when you feel free, the fear of being wrong, even when nothing feels right anymore. I'm pretty sure I was about 10 years old when I learned that Jesus could come back at any moment. It was the Left Behind book series that introduced this to me and taught me that Jesus would swoop in one day like a holy thief, grab the good ones and leave the rest to burn.
Now, Doctor, have you ever heard of a case like this where millions of people all over the world spontaneously combust at the same time?
The first night after learning about this, I didn't sleep at all. I was crying and pleading to God all night, just please don't come yet. Please let me get to 18. Please let me live a little. Please let me experience this life before you end it for all of us. I found myself bargaining and pleading with the God that everyone said loved me just for the right to become a person. And all of that time spent pouring my heart out to God in prayer, that wasn't faith, that was trauma. It was wrapped up in Bible verses, dressed in worship songs, and disguised as devotion. From 30,000 feet, I'm starting to see it, how my wrong turns and my missteps were actually the beginning of my pilgrimage. How my silence would never stay quiet. How leaving the faith wasn't like falling into a void, but more like walking through a door into a bigger room without walls. I am not the cautionary tale they warned me I would become. On this journey of unbecoming, I am actually becoming more of me. The law written on my heart is still there, still pulsing, but now I call it conscience. I call it love. I call it empathy. I call it me. This was never about going back. This is about seeing beauty in the empty stretch of horizon, learning that the absence of walls can also represent freedom, the no strings attached kind. And from up here, I feel that freedom. I see that the road goes on and that there's still so much more to explore. It's just that this time, it's for my sake.